We have a plenary session on the national policy context that regulates agricultural investments. We have four speakers, and then we will also have some discussants who will be joining us. The speakers all have 15 minutes each. So our first speaker is Dr. Dorothy Effa, and she is from the Policy Planning Directorate of MOFA, and she's going to talk to us to give an overview of the national policy framework that regulates agriculture investments. Dr. Effa is, she started working as an extension officer and rose through the ranks. And right now she's been working with women farmers for very many years. We are very excited to benefit from her years of experience. Dr. Effa, please come forward.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to talk about the national policy contest for gender agricultural investment in Ghana. And my outline consists of only 3 points. I'm going to talk a bit about the background of agriculture, which much has already been heard, and I will talk about the policy context as well as the institutional arrangements and programs that the sector is making towards attracting investment. The background, as I said, much has been said already, but we all know the contribution that agriculture provides to our national economy. This program, the Gender Equitable Agricultural Investment and Agricultural Development in Ghana, it has a huge potential to improve the lot of women. And I will add men because my chief director says when we are talking about gender, we should not forget about men. And men are the vulnerable in the country. Apart from all the efforts that they put, they still have challenges. We've heard lots about these challenges this morning, and it's true because, in fact, we all know the challenges. And I'm glad that we are having this opportunity because we all know what needs to be done. So I will not talk much about it, but we all know that, especially this, I will refer to the women because both of them, though they are all vulnerable when it comes to rural community, the women are more affected. And we realize that the access to land in Ghana, as in other countries, is hindered by lots of traditional rules, which we are all aware. And also access to finance is also a critical issue here. And as one writer said, because of when you come in terms of educational background, realize that women are quite often in the rural areas deficient, and as such, they have problems entering into the markets. I'm going to talk a little bit about the national policy context, which my honorable minister has mentioned a little bit about it. And we all know as a nation, Ghana Shared Growth Development Agenda, which is 2, is now the policy framework for all the MDAs in the country, which MOFA, we are also part of it. And when you look at its policy objectives, it has area that is really dedicated to gender and investment generally. And so it's saying that it needs to safeguard the security, safety, and protection of the rights of the vulnerable in the society, especially the girl child and women. And also seek to promote equal access to economic opportunity and resources and integrate gender considerations in all stages and in all dimensions of data production. And we have these broad strategies to meet the objectives that I stated earlier. And it's saying that we need to engender legislative and regulatory environment more conducive to women economic agency, and also develop the entrepreneurial and technical skills of women. And we need to explore avenues to equalize access to men and women entrepreneurs to financial services and assistance to businesses while integrating measurement of access rights, and also making sure that small businesses get the finances they need. These broad strategies of the GSDA seek to make sure that it integrates gender into government policy and planning systems and financial frameworks for the implementation at all levels. And also, the strategies is to ensure that gender equity in access to productive resources such as land that we are talking about, labor, technology, capital, finance, and information, and make sure that we reduce gender and geographical disparities in the distribution of national resources, as well as enhancing efficient national monitoring and evaluation system for generating relevant, reliable, and timely quantitative and qualitative gender disaggregated information. I've just mentioned about the broad strategy under the GSDA2, and this is specific to agriculture. So in agricultural sector, we are also trying to promote gender equity in land reforms and land use planning and management, and make sure that we intensify the incorporation of gender age analysis into agricultural research, which is also very, very critical because quite often they always, women are sometimes left behind. And then we also make sure that the strategy is to make sure that we mainstream gender issues into agric mechanization. Unfortunately, my chief director is the engineer about agric mechanization because women, we keep on uh, complaining or saying that most of the time when we are the engineers or inventors are developing this technology, sometimes they forget about women. So this is an area that we are looking at, that all women also have access to agricultural mechanization, and even the implements to when new ones develop take into consideration the women. And then increase access and improving allocation of resources to districts for extension service delivery, taking cognizance of gender sensitivity. And this is an area that we've heard about it, that especially in the rural areas, you look at the ratio of women extension officers to that of men is quite vast. And as the chair of for this program during the introduction said, I started working as an extension agent, and I worked at the district level, at the rural level, and you realize that this issue is very critical because I remember there was a time we went to the field to do survey. That time I was in Edra, and what happened was that we were talking to rural community, both men and women, and I was the only lady among the group. And at a point, I was far somewhere, and they have to call me and said, "We need you to talk to a certain woman." I said, "Why?" Said, "This woman says she will not talk to any man unless, because if the husbands come and find her talking to another man, she'll be in trouble. And therefore, she would like to talk to a woman. And I have to stop what I'm doing to go and talk to this woman." All these are some of the practical things that are going on. And then we need to take cognizance of it to make sure that whenever we are talking about extension services, we increase the take of women. And also promoting land reforms. I think we've heard a lot about it this morning because it's also a critical issue, especially when you get to irrigated lands. And by this is what we are, strategy that the sector is taking to make sure that men, women, everything get access, which I'll talk about it later on. And then whatever we are doing as a sector is also, does not go contrary to the national gender policy. because we are all aware that the national gender policy that is being promoted by Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection was revised and validated in 2015, and it has 7 broad objectives, which seems to accelerate efforts and commitment of government in empowering women to have livelihood access to economic opportunities, decent work to improve earnings, while addressing disparities in education, socioeconomic and cultural issues, health and agriculture, trade and related matters. So to enable all this national gender policy is there to enable all the all sectors to develop gender policies using the overarching national gender policy as a guide, which MOFA is no exception. So talk a little bit about our sectorial policy framework. And my Honorable Minister mentioned about the FASDEP, which is our Food and Agricultural Sector Development Policy, which is the main policy document for the agricultural sector. It also has strategies to mainstreaming gender. And in the FASDEP, it stated that we need to strengthen institutional capacity for effective gender mainstreaming and also advocate affirmative action in recruitment and training in MOFA, which MOFA is doing because we allocated some percentage for women, especially in our agricultural colleges. And we also ensure collection, use, and maintenance of gender disaggregation data at all levels. This is something that was lacking, and now we are really working on it. No, not perfect yet. And also prioritize key gender mainstreaming strategies annually for implementation. And I think we have the gender and agricultural development strategies, which you later on going to hear about it, so that whatever is in the strategy, we are trying to make sure that annually, at least we implement a key gender mainstreaming strategy. And also promote systematic and regular gender analysis of agricultural programs to ensure they do not increase the workload of poor women and men farmers. So when we get to the sectorial sector, as we have already mentioned, the gender and agricultural development strategy, which is now in the almost the final draft form, and which is the basis for mainstreaming gender into the policies and programs of the agricultural sector. And this is going to guide us. It has these 8 objectives, and I'm sure WIAD is going to talk about that, and therefore we just move forward. These are the basic 8 objectives. Now, when we come still talking on the sectorial policy framework, we, as I already mentioned about our first step, which is the policy document, we have the METASIP, which is the investment plan. And under it, it has adopted the value chain development as a key orientation for investment in agriculture in Ghana. And it says that gender equity will be emphasized in all aspects of the value chain development, including design and implementation of programs, sensitization of researchers on gender mainstreaming in research. So this is what our METASIP is stating. And the METASIP is stating, and I think it was from 2011 to 2015, and currently we are seriously working on METASIP 2, which we very much sure is going to lay more emphasis on gender equity in that investment plan. Now, institutional arrangements and programs. What is the sector doing to make sure that there's gender equity, that there's investment in agriculture sector? We have lots of programs that is going on to promote gender equitable investment in the agricultural sector. And I will just mention only a few. We have the Women in Agricultural Development Directorate, which is a directorate that is solely responsible for issues related to women and then rural communities, especially the vulnerable. And they have a series of programs that are aimed at helping investment in the agricultural sector. For instance, in the area of processing, where they are helping the rural community, especially the women, to come out with desirable processed products that will be appreciated at the market. And they also have other programs that are also helping the rural community, especially women, to lessen the workload that they do in the home, and also managing the home and all other programs. That is, all this is aimed at increasing equitable investment in agriculture. And then the ministry has agricultural business support units. We have established this agricultural business support unit specifically to increase investment in agriculture. And they are trying to have profile of all the commodities and interesting investment area. So all those that are really interested in investing in agriculture can contact us at agribusiness unit, the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, so that we give you all the opportunities that are available. And we also have other major programs to boost agricultural investment, taking cognizance of gender equity. And one of these programs my Honorable Minister mentioned is the JCAP, and then the GASIP, JCAP, which is Ghana Commercial Agricultural Project, and the Ghana Agricultural Sector Investment Plan, stroke the Northern Rural Growth Project. All these projects have gender text in this project, and is tailored in a way that there will be the women, who quite often refer as the vulnerable, are not left behind. And I'm sure Jacob is going to talk more about that, while we are this also going to talk more, as well as I'm sure the NGRP. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Effa, for giving us a very thorough explanation of the policy, overview of the national policy framework and context. And of course, also for keeping to time, which is important. Our next speaker is Professor John Bugri, who is at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. And he's going to be talking to us about the Ghana Commercial Agriculture Program that
and they also have
that you just mentioned. So it's a very good follow-up, actually. And so a little bit about the history of Dr. Bugri, Professor Bugri. He's an associate professor of land and economy, and is currently the head of Department of Land Economy at Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Kumasi. He holds a PhD from the University of Greenwich and an MPhil from the University of Cambridge, both in the UK, and also a BSc in Land Economy from the Kwame Nkrumah University from Kumasi. He is particularly interested in people and land relations and the implications thereof for sustainable land use and development. He has done quite a lot of research looking at the political economy and the implications of changes in access to and use of land, resources on gender and on livelihood and on sustainability. Other areas of research include looking at land tenure and policy issues in terms of poverty reduction and urban and poverty reduction in agrarian and urban communities. And he has published extensively in all these areas. Professor Bugri, please come forward.
Thank you. Good morning, colleagues, and welcome to my presentation. I have to say I'm feeling a little bit jealous because I don't have my Vice Chancellor here to constantly refer to. So I would borrow the Honorable Minister if and when necessary. I'm really taxed with talking about GCAP, but as a researcher, I've tried to be a bit savvy. There are more people qualified to talk about GCAP than I am in this room. So I'm kind of qualifying it to what I have done for GCAP together with other colleagues, as in what GCAP is doing to create tools that will enable responsible agri-investment in the country. If you look at the international scene, a lot has been done regarding what we ought to be doing to ensure that there are responsible investors in the agri sector. To that extent, we have come to the understanding that we need to become context specific if they are to be operationalized. I'm talking here about the VGs and the price and the World Bank safeguards and the IFC standards. In that regard, if you look at the landscape or land governance of the country, I want to, in an analytical framework of 4 C's, state that there is what we call consensus, confusing, contestations, and conflicts. Within this 4C framework, how might I illustrate them? Consensus, yes, we all agree that in the country, the traditional land sector is the highest in percentage terms. In respect of confusing, we don't clearly know what exactly their role is because it is evolving. Are they fiduciary in terms of holding the land for the entire community, or are they proprietary in terms of being able to sell the land of themselves and pocket the money? We have some element of confusion there. Within that confusion box, we have contestations and counter-contestations because the land is a source of livelihood. And sometimes that will generate or degenerate into full-blown conflicts. Nonetheless, agri-investments, very, very important if we have to make any headway as an economy. And the potential benefits are as depicted together with the risks. How do we get that carried out? That is where GCAP comes in as a multi-donor World Bank USAID supported program or project to deliver on responsible agri-investments and other things at the commercial scale. We, and I'm talking about Landesa, having won a bid to undertake this consultancy, decided to work on what the terms of reference given us was, and that was identify practical recommendations which actually would ensure socially responsible, economically rewarding, as well as environmentally friendly agri-investments in the country. Specific tasks are as follows. I really don't think there will be much time to run through all of them because they kind of dovetail into the policy context, the technical context, as well as the operational context. So we had to do assessment of the legal policy framework of the country, the leasehold structures that exist traditionally, and then also come out with innovative practices. Those specific tasks continue, and I will just, because of time, scale through them to this point. What I'm trying to focus on is what the model lease agreement is all about as a tool, and what the community investment guidelines also are as a tool. Research methodology, we built a solid team that undertook the work, and I don't have to spend much time there. The key findings, I want to categorize them into 2. We came out with the conclusion that there was a weak policy, institutional, and legal framework in the country when it came specifically to agri-investments as a subject area, and the specific issues are embodied over there: incomplete policy framework, we have complex contradictory legal regime, insecure land rights, insufficient legal regulatory safeguards, lack of coordination, insufficient institutional, financial, and human capacity, as well as lack of sufficient clarity to approaches for land registration. Now, within this context, what I want to highlight is this, that if you don't have, or if you do have an approach that is not very much gender sensitive, i.e. a gender neutral approach to issues in land, then you cannot expect to have outcomes that are also gender sensitive. We need to take affirmative action. Beyond that, the second area was there is no capacity for the enforcement of environmental legislations in the country. And that is really very important if we are talking about equitable agri-investments as an area. What then do we have to do to create a tool that to translate in practical terms how to achieve socially responsible, economically rewarding, and environmentally friendly investments in the agri-sector? We came out with this model list in the way that we have categorized it into 24 provisions, but these are critical elements and limitations that we are warning before the implementation. The elements are that It contains a unique and innovative provision distinguishing it from traditional lease form. It incorporates best practice, reflects the variance of land tenure, and then also it has alternative terms and provisions that communities would want to choose from. The limitations are set to the right. It's not a substitute for fair and equitable negotiation. That has to actually be undertaken. And it shouldn't be used verbatim. We're also encouraging that effective use requires ongoing community engagement, as well as that step of a model lease is only one in a very long process. That is still reflecting what the model lease is, and I'm now going into the various sections. Section 1 of the lease is actually on parties and recitals. For communities and investors, we need to know who they are entering into that kind of contractual relationship. Then we are talking about Section 2 as defining and interpreting key terms that are applied in that particular model lease context. Then the location of the land would have to be very well described, because you need to know what the subject matter is by location and description. Indeed, anybody conversant with lease arrangements would have to agree that there must be a term, and that particular term or duration has to be specified. But we also had Section 5 dealing with the grant of rights. What rights are specifically being conveyed would have to be specifically made to the parties to know. And the key thing is Section 6, financial compensation. We've talked about economically rewarding, and in that context, land is a primary asset of production that you are taking from a commodity. In that regard, you would have to compensate beyond just the fact that you are buying a market commodity. To that extent, we gave optional areas for consideration, and these were annual fixed payment. We also had areas to do with percentages of gross revenue, so that the communities are being compensated with respect to a percentage of the company's gross earnings, as well as consideration was given to something that was referred to this morning, and it was the case of equity in use of land in arrangements like this. But it is actually left to the community to pick and choose what they want. Beyond these financial compensations, we talked about non-monetary benefits. That has to build capacity. So employment and training, outgrow programs were very much suggested for consideration by communities. Other forms of compensation, corporate social responsibility. That has to be very much highlighted in the company's engagement with the community where the land is located. And communication is a very key strategy if there is going to be avoidance of dispute, or at least minimization of dispute. So we recommended that there has to be a very well worked out communication package in that particular agreement situation. Then we also did recommend a community land management committee. This is where the gender dimension played out very well, that numbers of committee members should necessarily include women to a reasonable number, dependent upon the community that is involved. So within this 5-phase framework, we have got community, investor, government roles assigned all through to the 5th stage, and I'm just now skipping through for want of time, but we request that you do read. Then we would come to what I consider the conclusion, implementation, and next steps. We think that there is potential for improved agri-investment in Ghana, notwithstanding the complex nature of the land question. And in that regard, any chance of responsible agri-investment in the country, however, has to be anchored on yet another set of 4C words. Those, I now want them to be consultation, cooperation, collaboration, and coordination. Whatever set of recommendations that we are going to make going forward, if they don't anchor on these 4C frameworks, we're not going to go far. And in that respect, we have got these specific recommendations which you would find have very well been drawn and linked to the 4Cs I have just said you need to pay attention to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Bugri, for sharing with us some of the tools that you've been developing to ensure that agriculture investments are equitable and sustainable. Our next speaker is Miss Mary Opoku Asiama, and she's the Director of Women in Agriculture Development in MOFA. Again, her presentation follows quite closely to what Dr. Dorothy Effa was talking about. So these are some of the institutional arrangements in place to make sure that investments are equitable. Ms. Opoku Asiama she has more than 35 years of experience in MOFA, working with men and women farmers. She has worked in different regions of Ghana, and in addition has mentored many women farmers to ensure that their investments pay off and that they benefit from agriculture. When I asked her what I should say, she said, "No, I'm not the director. I just follow. I'm a messenger." So let's hear what she has to say. Welcome.
The outline of my presentation is as follows: an introduction, gender-related constraints in the sector, institutional arrangements in promoting gender-responsive agriculture, strategies and initiatives to mainstream gender in agriculture, recommendations, and conclusion. I'll try to be as brief as possible. MOFA acknowledges the contribution of the diverse groups in the sector. One of the 12 guidelines of FASTEP 2 says that all policies and programs will be designed from a gender perspective. This creates the environment that works towards achieving gender equality in the sector. METASIP, our plan, which ensures that we carry out our policy, also emphasizes gender equity in all activities along the agricultural value chain. Contribution of women to the sector. Much has been said about this already, but just to take us through, we are aware of the important resource in agriculture, of the role of women as an important resource in agriculture and the rural economy. They are the farmers, they are laborers, processors, traders, and the female share of agricultural labor ranges from 20 to 50%. That big. Yet they face many constraints because of their gender. These constraints reduce their productivity and retard progress on the broader economic and social development goals. Some of the gender-related constraints in the sector are limited access to key productive resources such as land, credit, information technology, which have been mentioned already. Land ownership and internal security is also an issue. Men hold about 3.2 times more total farmland than women, according to research. Challenges in accessing land by women are to do with the processes and the cost, and women have acknowledged these. They have acknowledged that they need money to own land, and for that reason, they even find a need to have farmer-based organizations that will help them own bigger lands. Women's right to access credit is also a limitation. Of course, you need money to own land, whether you are renting or buying. According to research, about 40.4% of women in the farming arena or agricultural arena have never accessed credit. Frequency of access to extension service is also an issue. Whilst the men are accessing about 75%, the women are around 24%. Of course, that woman has to cook, She has to do things at home and will not even be available when there's an extension technology dissemination program. 4 main barriers to accessing agricultural extension services mentioned by farmers are that they are not very close to the agricultural extension officers. No, she has to stop doing very important things at home to be able to reach a farmer. And she would rather opt to be at home working for the household. Personal perception. Some of them don't even think they need anybody to give them advice on extension service. No. And they lack knowledge of the existence of even such services. According to research, female farmers have lower adoption rate of modern crop varieties and other technologies. Of course, even when they have this knowledge, they do not have access to much land. Other challenges include the absence of up-to-date data on smallholder farmers, especially women, to inform policy decisions and programming. Gender-neutral agricultural research. Most of the research is not gender-specific. Nutrition, which is a serious problem amongst children, adolescents, and women of reproductive age, also affects the agricultural productivity indirectly. The triple workload of women undermines their productivity and earnings. Rationale for improving women's access to land. Strengthening women's access to and control over land is an important means of raising their status and also an influence within the households and communities. Improving their access to land and security of tenure has direct impact on farm productivity and improving household welfare. When a woman has resource, most of it is used at home, used on the family, used on the children. Strategies to address the gender constraints that have been mentioned by other speakers and by myself. The Ministry of Agric specifically has developed the GATS, the Gender and Agricultural Development Strategy. This is to inform gender mainstreaming processes of the sector. It has 8 strategies, as Dorothy said, and as we can see, these are the strategies to enhance institutional capacity of MOFA to address gender issues, promote production and use of sex and age disaggregated data, improve extension service delivery, improve access by farmers to financial services, improve access to information on land rights, improve development and promotion of appropriate technologies in agriculture, promote the diversification and development of new processed products, and enhance environmental protection through appropriate agricultural practices. The GATS has achieved a lot, but we still found that there's a need to review it. These are some of the achievements. And we are in the process of reviewing the GATS. The West African Agricultural Productivity Program has supported us to do this, and there's a draft available. The constraints, the strategies to address this includes the establishment of the Women in Agric Development Directorate in the Ministry of Agric. And to support and empower women, we have 4 main areas of activities. We do food-based nutrition in relation to food production and diet improvement, value addition to our cultural produce, food safety at food processing sites, and gender mainstreaming of agricultural policies, programs, and activities. Functions of WIAD. We do policy formulation, provide technical backstopping to the regions and districts. We collaborate with research, for instance, food research and the universities. We monitor and evaluate programs in the regions and districts. WIAD has worked closely with GCAP. We advocate for the inclusion of women and women groups in the project as nucleus farmers and outgrowers. We support GCAP to implement an all-inclusive business model. All the nucleus farmers have substantial number of outgrowers, of which 41% are women. WIAD also supports the promotion of gender integration into WAP. Some of the interventions are disseminating value addition technologies, and so far we've trained 345 people, 288 of them being females and 27 males. WIAD advocates women's access to improved seeds and planting materials and a gender-responsive adaptive research. Technology transfer is key to our activities. As we can see from the pictures, these women are being trained to use sweet potato in all sorts of food forms. And it's interesting to find some men participating, because we believe that agriculture is about men and women. We only give the women a special dispensation because they are less endowed, and we need to empower them to ensure that they can also contribute to the economy of their homes and of the nation as a whole. This is a breakdown of some beneficiaries for various programs that the ministry has run. Challenges to mainstreaming gender. There's inadequate budgetary allocation. Gender issues are mainly considered as women issues, but as we've all learned here, gender is about both men and women. And the less privileged among them should be taken care of. And statistically, we find that it's the women mostly who are less endowed. There's low capacity in gender analysis. This needs to be taken care of. Recommendations. Provision of resource, especially increased budget allocation for WIAD activities. We need a strong political and leadership role. MOFA directorates and decentralized agriculture departments must be made accountable to implementing the new GATS that we are coming up with. Capacity building of staff in gender analysis and production of gender-sensitive reports is very important. In conclusion, we are saying gender mainstreaming is a complex process. It's not that straightforward, and it involves a change in attitudes and mindset. It requires consistent effort and resource and long-term commitments. Political and leadership will, very important. In order to be fully effective in this area, MOFA needs to institutionalize gender as part of its business model to address gender-specific constraints in the sector. Integrating gender concerns into policies, programs, and projects produce significant gains for society by increasing agricultural productivity, reducing poverty, hunger, and malnutrition, and promoting economic growth. Gender-aware policies and well-designed development projects help close gender gaps. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your presentation and really for explaining to us the role of the women in agriculture development. in MOFA and their role in making sure that gender is mainstreamed. Our fourth presenter is Ms. Sheila Minka Premo of Apex Law Consult, and she's going to talk to us about land-related policies that are shaping agriculture investments and their implications for women. Ms. Sheila Minka Premo is a lawyer with a degree in law from the University of Ghana and a certificate to practice law from the Ghana Law School. She also holds a master's degree in law from the George Washington University Law Center in Washington, D.C. in the USA. She has practiced law for 26 years, and she's currently a managing consultant of Apex Law Consult. She has experience in family law and land law, as well as in other areas of practice. She has been a consultant and managed many, many projects related to land. And what I would like to mention here is that she's currently the technical coordinator for the ascertainment of customary law projects, which is under the World Bank funded land administration project, which is at the Ministry of Land and Natural Resources. And she was also one of the team of consultants that helped to draft the food safety policy for Ghana. Sheila.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. I think that my presentation falls between this policy section as well as the law section, because originally I was told to talk about the law, and then I was asked to add the policy part. So it's a mixture of the two. And since some of the things I'm going to say have already been said, I will not repeat it, and I'll try and focus on areas that I have done some work in and share a few things. So I'll look at some laws and policies relating to land in Ghana. Laws. We have a plural legal system, customary law and statutory law working alongside. And usually it is women who suffer in cases like in those kind of situations. Now, what underlies our legal system is, like I said, Article 11 of our Constitution indicates the plurality of the sources of law that we have in Ghana. Article 11 indicates the laws of Ghana as the Constitution, laws passed by Parliament, rules, regulations, etc., existing law, the common law. And what I would like to emphasize is that what is defined as the common law. The common law of Ghana shall comprise the rules of law generally known as the common law, rules generally known as the doctrines of equity, and the rules of customary law, including those determined by the Superior Court of Judicature. And then for the purposes of this article, it says that customary law means the rules of law which by custom are applicable to particular communities in Ghana. So when you're talking about land law and customary law, the rules are unending, lots and lots of them. The other parts of the Constitution which also underlines, when you're talking about policies, are very important. We have Article 17 of our Constitution which says there shouldn't be any discrimination on the basis of gender. However, provision is made in Article 17(4) for affirmative action when it comes to land and other property rights within marriage. Then Article 36 talks about the need for the state to ensure, this is under the directive principles of state policy, it talks about the need for the state to ensure adequate means of livelihood. Studies have indicated that 80% of the land holdings in Ghana are held through various customary means, and only 20% are held by the state or by individuals, etc. So when we talk about customary law, it's very, very important and very key with regard to land. The National House of Chiefs and Law Reform Commission undertook a pilot project which was initially funded by GIZ from 2006 to 2011, where they ascertained customary law on land in 20 traditional areas, looking at what are the hierarchy of land interest and the bundle of rights which goes with it. It identified some of the key land holding interest as the allodial title, usufruct, leases, customary tenancies, licenses, etc. The studies revealed that women are largely ignored when it comes to customary land administration in our country. I've already mentioned this, that land is very important. Basically, customary law still remains very oral in nature. Like I said, some have been documented, but most of it is undocumented, and this creates a lot of uncertainty for potential investors in agric, leading to litigation over land in many areas, since the rules are unclear and the record of land sold out sometimes is also not readily available. There are some anthropological studies and judicial decisions on customary land law, which also exist as well. When it comes to statutory law, we have a whole series of laws. I'm sure the next session we hear more and more about the law. But the key thing is that the laws of this country indicate that when you have an interest in land which is not registered, it does not confer good title, and therefore anybody else who comes with a better title can easily displace you. And this is the area in which a lot of women suffer when it comes to land that they hold for various agric purposes. Apart from these laws I've mentioned, the other laws which come into place when it comes to looking at women and agric, since women acquire land through various secondary means, the lineage system, through marriage or by contractual agreements, as everybody else can. So we have the Intestate Succession Act, 1985, PND 111, which indicates how properties should be distributed when the person dies intestate, as well as our Matrimonial Causes Act, as well as customary law rules on how property is shared at the point of divorce. Then we have, I've already mentioned Article 22 of our Constitution, which indicates that properties which are jointly acquired by spouses in the course of a marriage should be equitably distributed. This law requires specific legislation to be passed, as at now that legislation has not been passed yet, but our Supreme Court is already using the principles of the Constitution in cases like Mensa and Mensa, where it held that equity is equality, and therefore, when a woman was able to establish that she was engaged in various enterprises with her husband and properties came out of it, she was given 50% of it. There are also a number of policies in place with regard to land. The key is the 1999 National Land Policy that outlined a long-term land administration reform process aimed at the stimulation of economic development, reducing poverty, and promoting social stability. And one of the guiding principles of the policy is ensuring the principle of fair access to land and security of tenure. The land administration project of the Ministry of Land and Natural Resources was initiated in 2003 as a vehicle for implementing the policy, and they piloted setting up customary land secretariats to enable traditional people at the traditional community level to document their interest in land, because when interest in land is not documented, that is where people can be easily displaced and then lose their agric interest. The other policies which you've heard about from those who are actually at the ministry and know more about the GPRS and then the specific agric policies. What are some of the challenges relating to land for gender and agric investment? Basically, females have challenges in accessing land and holding on to land for agric purposes. One of them, a colleague called Beatrice Duncan, had done a study on women in agriculture, and she actually traced the policy, the way in which policy has been enacted from pre-colonial times to the current times. She indicates that in pre-colonial era, it was mainly subsistence farming, and women's role was recognized, particularly within the matrilineal settings. They could hold land and do their own investments, etc. During the colonial era, British restrictions on women's land rights, which was imposed by them, brought in some differences, and they also introduced cash crops, which was introduced as a male domain, and therefore it is men who went into the cash crop investment, whilst women remained in the food crop area. And then the post-colonial era has continued this, even though we've already heard about some policies which have been trying to address this. Then women's land rights and the customary law tend to be predominantly, as I've already indicated, secondary rights. They are even in the course of the study undertaken by the Ascertainment of Customary Law Project. There are areas where even when the woman wants to go and buy interest or go and get a lease interest in land, she has to go with a male. Only a man who could negotiate on her behalf. In other parts of the country, it's not as bad, but in other places, it is very bad. With regard to secondary interest, as I've indicated, one of the means by which women hold land is through marriage, etc., etc. And at the point of independence, is one classic case where we have, it's called Cote and Mati. It was a woman who had helped her husband in his agric investment, and at the end of the marriage, she wanted a share. And the court said no, a woman's responsibility was only to help her husband in whatever he was doing, whether it's farming or trading. And at the end, in case when the marriage breaks up, all she's entitled to is maybe some maintenance from the man, but she had no right to part of whatever came out of the investment. Now, in another study by Cote and they looked at peri-urban land use and indicated that women are at a higher risk of losing interest in such lands when developments catch up with such communities. Women don't have information regarding their land rights and how to secure it, but those who have managed to go to court have been able to secure their land rights. There's a case in a law report called Owusu Nyako, where the woman helped the man in a cocoa farm. On the 7th year, the man asked her to leave. The relationship broke up. And the woman went to court, and the court gave her 1/3 of the farm. So the courts are there, and those who are bold enough to go to court are able to secure their land rights. According to the Land Administration Project, some of the major problems with regard to gender and land is the low level of awareness of gender issues among the staff of the Lands Commission and other related agencies, low representation and absence of women in decision-making in land issues, biases against women in the size, fertility, and interest that they have in land, discriminatory traditional practices, and insecurity of land among women, which I've already mentioned, rapid commercialization of land, and the inability of majority of women to afford land and its implications, biases against women in the process of acquiring and registering and documenting their interest in land. As a result of all these problems, it appears as if when it comes to major commercial agric investments, it's become like a male domain. Women are still in the subsistence area, and they continue to remain poor, and it's very important that they are given access by way of information to enable them to secure their land rights, and there's need for affirmative action to ensure that they are involved at the policy level as well to take the appropriate decisions. A lot of recommendations have been made, including the need for to retain a regulatory role. The state should come in when it comes to this customary area where land is primarily held through these customary means. There's a need for more policies in there. There's a need for law reform, for legal provisions to be enacted to capture and formalize legitimate customary rights within the formal law. Need to undertake more research to provide evidence for advocacy, etc. I know that the Land Administration Project is trying to address a lot of these things. So my major recommendation is that there's a need for the MOFA, which is responsible for agriculture, to link up with the LAP, since LAP has a gender strategy, which has the objective of enabling LAP formulate comprehensive development interventions that would address gender-related problems in the implementation of the project. It seeks to facilitate the mainstreaming of gender into the project and its associated processes in land-related agencies and institutions. Some of the activities they engage in includes public education, capacity building, institutional processes, advocacy, collaboration, and networking. The expected outcome of the policy, of the strategy, is that women's rights, especially in customary rural and peri-urban areas, will be better secured, more equitable information and access to opportunities, benefits, and decision-making in land administration will be achieved, and women and men will be better informed about LAP's objectives and strategies. So I'll end by saying that quite a number of studies which I referred to in my full presentation, a lot of which were all funded by development partners. There's a need for support for all the recommendations which have been outlined in these studies to become real and for changes to actually occur on the ground. So a lot needs to be done to ensure that women who grow most of the food we eat are in a better position to have access to secure land, to enhance their agricultural investments, to ensure food security in Ghana. Thank you very much.
Sheila Minka Premo. So those were the 4 key presentations that we had. And they've spanned a whole field for us, starting from Dorothy's presentation on the policy environment or the national policy framework, then some examples that came from John Bugri and Mary, talking about WEIRD and talking about the JICA program, and then Sheila caps it off by talking about the land laws and policies. We have a few discussants who are going to give us a feel or some comments or questions or issues that they feel have risen as they listen to the presentations. Once we will give them very little time, they will all have 5 minutes each. And then after that, we'll open the discussions to the plenary. My first discussant is Rita Roxon from Guinness.
We have actually invested or spending a lot of time to develop a local raw material sourcing for our production. Everybody knows traditionally we use barley and malt for the production of beer. In Ghana, we don't grow barley, we don't grow malt. What we have, for instance, we have cassava, we have maize, we have sorghum. So we are investing a lot in that area. Having had the discussions, well, the private sector, first of all, will look at where or is productivity based. So where can I get my raw materials in the kind of specifications and the quantity that I'll get. That'll be, for instance, the first thing the private sector will look at. So if it means we have to go to the north where we source for sorghum, or go to the central or Volta regions where we source for cassava, that will be primarily what we look at. Having said that, there is also the part where we promote diversity, and of course looking at gender diversity. So if there are areas where we know we will be impacting more women, and we know by impacting more women, we are improving livelihoods across communities. So yes, we will be more than interested to invest in such areas. So we are interested in looking at total or equity across gender, across regions, across industries. And to selfishly say that, of course, that will mean there'll be more money in people's pockets. So, of course, they will enjoy our brands. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I forgot to say that one of the nice things with this conference is we do have the presence of private sector very well represented. Another discussant is Dr. King David Amoa of FONG, Farmers Organization. You can introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Honorable MC. I want to take this opportunity to thank the organizers for the invitation granted to all of us and to participate even in this forum. I got so excited listening to the presenters. I think they have done a good job, and I want to commend them for the good presentations they have made. Sitting down and listening to all the speakers for the presentations, I realized that they were quoting from the law, they were quoting from the constitution, from the bylaws, from FASDEP, from Metasip, from Ghana Shared Agricultural something, from CADEP, from Maputo to Malabo and all that, and talking about gender, which is very relevant for our discussion here. We have also heard words like constraints, challenges, strategies, recommendations. What are we doing about all these things that have been presented? That is what we, the Farmers Organization Network and the Ghana Federation of Agricultural Producers, are so much concerned about. When we talk about gender, we say let's mainstream. And we hear like we have to do this, we have to ensure. Who are to ensure? Who is to do that? I think it is we, the people who are gathered here, who must do that. Then we in the Farmers Organization are making conscious efforts, even in our policies and in our constitution. And when we invite people to our programs, we make sure that we say 2 people, 1 must be a woman, whether you like it or not. And if 2 men come, we send 1 out, and then we only take 1. So what we are saying is that we just don't pay lip service. We must actually make sure that these things that we mean actually work. I was really taken aback, Madam MC. I went to a school where the PTA was meeting, and one of my children was there. And what happened? We were to do election, and during the election, there was a man and 2 men and a woman, and the whole hall was filled with women. Then I got up, knowing where I was coming from, and I was lobbying the women. This is an opportunity. Let's take the opportunity and change the situation. Let's, for the first time, vote for a PTA chairperson who is a woman. At the end of my lobbying and everything, when the whole thing happened, I was so disappointed. It was a man who won it. And I said, we women, where are we? You see, the whole thing. And this is the conscious efforts that must be made. And the last recommendation I want to make is also that this gender issue should not remain in Accra. It should not remain in the capitals, but it must go down, trickle down to the grassroots, where our women, all those things listed there, the brutalities, the discrimination, the challenges are there. What are we doing? I think I will stop here, Madam Chairperson.
Again, that's the nature of the multi-stakeholder nature. We have farmers' organizations represented to remind us that farmers also have a role in this. Thank you. Our third discussant is Ms. Mariana Adama Issa from DFATD, which will tell you what it means.
Thank you very much. My name is Mariam Adama Issa. I'm a senior gender advisor at the Department of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development, Canada. It used to be CEDA, but that's the new name. I'm very pleased to be here, and Mr. Chairman and colleagues. As I listen to all the discussions going on, it sort of reminds me of Canada's own experience working with the Ministry of Agriculture. Canada is invested in agriculture for several years, and one of the priority areas for us is gender mainstreaming. And so through our sector support to the ministry, we have also provided technical assistance to mainstream gender. And listening to the presentations, I realized that for Ghana, we are so good with policies and strategies. And so you will find that we know the language, it is all over the document. But the big challenge is when it comes to implementation. And our experience working with the sector shows clearly that even though the documents categorically state that gender equity should inform all programming and activities, you don't find it consistently integrated in the programs. And the recent review of Metasec looked at the gender coverage and clearly indicated that except for the Northern Rural Growth Program, all the other projects did not effectively integrate gender. So I'm not surprised the Deputy Minister made reference to the Northern Rural Growth Program, because it seems to be doing something very good that I think need to be upskilled and replicated across all the programming. I would say that the ministry's gender and agriculture development strategy has been implemented since 2004. And an assessment that was done on that raised issues in 2 areas. That the ministry has done well in building gender capacity, and also is done well in collecting sex disaggregated data. But over the years, we realized that due to attrition, we are losing that capacity. So in the WIAD presentation where they talk about lack of capacity for gender analysis, I'm not surprised. Capacity has been built over the years, but I guess people are moving into new positions, and hopefully they are sending the expertise with them. At MOFA or the sector still need some capacity to use the disaggregated data to inform policy. It's one thing collecting the data, it's another thing analyzing the data for its implication for policy and programming. And I'm glad to say that the ministry itself recognizes that as a challenge. I would also want to say that in GATS 1, which is the Gender and Culture Development Strategy 1, we realized that institutional capacity, yes, we are building capacity, but the area that affects improving the lives of women, which is the second part of GATS 1, I'm sure a lot has been done, but there are no enough documentation of the results and experiences over the years of implementing GATS 1. Currently, there is a development of GATS 2, and all that is being taken into consideration to strengthen GATS 2. But the issue for me is that, yes, we are moving into value chains, we are looking at value addictions, we are looking at market access. How different is GATS 2 going to be from GATS 1? We know the whole challenge of the GATS 1 lying on the shelf for a while. Implementation starts in 2004. Yes, we've made progress in capacity, but we still haven't impacted the lives of men and women at the local level where development actually happens. What can we do differently in GATS 2 moving forward? There are a number of issues. I realized also in the WIAD presentation, it talks about its original mandate, nutrition, and then we also see gender mainstreaming. Now we are saying gender and agriculture. Yes, the original mandate is important because in developing a gender strategy, you need to take into consideration specific actions to address some of the gaps. And so WIAD is doing very well there. But the gender mainstreaming part, is it the proper location for gender mainstreaming? Are we adding that to the responsibility of WIAD? Maybe I will stop here, and as the discussion goes on, we will raise more issues as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, our discussants. What we are going to do now is open the discussion for plenary, so we can hear your voice. And I see one hand up, very, very, wow, 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll take the questions as they come.
My name is Gladys Sedusa Sewa, a farmer organization rep. My question is about the presenters, what we had said about the policies and guidelines they are talking about. It's something that we have been hearing from them for the past years. I want to find out from her whether what they are doing is being translated in local dialects for the rural women to be able to know and understand exactly what the policies are. And have they been getting down to the people whom they are working with? Because I'm a rep from the farm organization, I do work with the rural women. And when you go to the MOFA district offices, you go and you meet the director, and the director will tell you that for the past years, he has not received any consignment of money to even go to visit a farmer. No extensions people, AEAs, who are working in the districts, they are also complaining of logistics. So what is happening? We have these things well documented on paper, but it's not being put into practice. What are they doing about it? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm assuming this question will go to Mary Opoku Asiama. Indeed, you did address an aspect of this in your presentation, but the question indicates that there may be a gap between what you addressed and where her experiences, her lived experiences, have enabled her make the contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Lydia Sasu, and I think my sister has said what I wanted to say, but I'm adding something to it. Apart from translation it, we are looking at rural women being major part of the farmers. and as we always say, my sisters and mothers, we are looking at even age. We said it, that what are we doing about this aged? We don't know much about it. but it's through education. I would say that with the law, if we are trained, we had a program with Wildaf. Lois is here. And I can tell you and assure you that the illiterate women are now translating something, the policy, into reality. So we have a tax. We recently visited the deputy minister, and she was so happy because we were speaking local languages, and they felt their problems, which they always ask us. And when we answered them, they thought we are just playing, but he gave them the same answer. The only question I have for the extension is, we were told of extension, and I think we haven't got there. We'll get there, and we'll see what it means by this extension, and how can we, the rural women, will get to that stage. Thank you.
My name is Amina Al-Hassan Bintali, and I'm the gender specialist for the Northern Rural Growth Program. I feel I have to talk because so many people have mentioned Northern Rural Growth, and I feel I also have to contribute somehow. The first point that the gentleman here made about making everything practical, there's a kind of disconnect between the theory and the practice, and that is the issue. And then Mariama also went on to talk about that, and I'm saying that everybody here is mentioning Northern Rural Growth Program because we are down there, involving a lot of stakeholders, and many of them are actually here, and especially the House of Chiefs, the traditional rulers who are not really, I don't know if they are here. They are very important because the main thrust about agenda is the fact that culture is a barrier. And if you want to make that difference, once you are putting all those other things in place, you have to be working from that end too. That is the point. Thank you very much.
My name is Dr. Thies. I'm for the GIZ here in agriculture. It's not a question, it's perhaps a statement. We made, over years in Africa, we worked for access to land. And I have had the feeling we are running against a beton wall, which is named culture. And in fact, by the means we put in, the outcome was very disappointing. On the other hand, when we started with the value chain, and when we started with the private sector to work in the processing, suddenly the culture was that women are here often, or all over Africa, often responsible for processing agriculture products. And suddenly, 90% of the jobs created were women jobs. For example, I give just a few examples. In Burkina Faso, we started with Anacardium occidentale cashew. We created 5,000 jobs for women in Burkina, and this is a really great challenge to do so. Same thing was also with rice, parboiled rice. So to push up, perhaps not only to think about laws and access to land, but all think about private sector, think about processing. This is, I think it's a very important challenge here.
You said initially your outcomes in Ghana were disappointing. You don't know?
I was talking about all over Africa. I'm a bit long. The first time I came in Ghana was in '66. So I worked a long time. I was a child at that time. I worked a long time but I was speaking about GIZ experience in general in Africa, at least in West Africa. And there I must admit, all what we have done in direction of gender was very traditional, was access to land, was law, and from my personal point of view, it was really disappointing. Access to law is perhaps one point. It's not only to do the law, but to make real access to law for everybody. Perhaps just one example in Mauritania. In a real 800 kilometers from the capital of Mauritania, of Nouakchott, there was a cyber cafe who gives access to the law which is about divorcing. And the women saw this law about divorcing, and 2 hours later, the judge, which was corrupt, was thrown out and never could come back in this village. So it's really empowerment to make access to law also.
Well, thank you very much. The issue of disseminating technologies at the local level is pertinent, and I think we have done very well. Nobody uses English as the mode of communication with our farmers. Even when the resource person cannot speak the local dialect, we get somebody who understands English and the local dialect to interpret so that the message goes down very well to the beneficiaries. I did mention that we are challenged. Funding is an issue. Number of extension officers, especially women, is an issue. But we have done the best we can along the way. We've collaborated with researchers, we've collaborated with projects and programs to deliver. And as we saw from the few pictures that I showed, it's no funding from the normal source. You know, institutions like World Food Program, other projects in the ministry, WAP, RTIM, have resourced us to take our message down to our farmers. We might not be able to cover all of them. It is not possible every year, but gradually we disseminate the information to the farmers. And when farmer groups, especially women groups, have a need, they can always make a request. And then we will direct you to the source or the closest possible resource where you can get the information you need. We have the Youth in Agric program. We have the Youth in Agric program within the Ministry of Food and Agriculture that is encouraging the young, the youth, to be interested in agriculture, considering agriculture as a business, not just sustaining or everyday, means of living, but actual business like we have in other areas. Economic benefits should be coming out of agriculture, and we cannot continue to rely on the aged and tired farmers. Now we have award winners who are less than 45 years. It is a clear indication of the change that is coming along. So our aged will be replaced by younger farmers. I can assure you of that.
I would like to say that listening to the presentations, it appears as if in terms of the policy framework, everything appears to be in place at the national level, medium-term development framework. Gender issues are there. We have a national gender policy. FASDEP makes references to gender issues as well as the METASIP and the Gender in Agricultural Development Strategy also. My issue really has to do with the extent to which the ministry collaborates with other ministries to get this agenda forward. I think Sheila made mention when she said that MOFA probably needs to link up with LAP, which is situated within the Ministry of Lands, to get this issue forward. So that is one area. The other one concerns the role of WIAD. I'm not too sure whether we are packaging the gender issue and placing it within WIAD and saying that we have addressed it. Mariama also pointed to that issue. To what extent are we really ensuring that the gender issue is properly mainstreamed and not something that is given to one entity and then we take the box that it has been done? These are my issues. Thank you.
I'm Aisha Idris Umeki. I work for Advance in Tamale. My comment is basically to the presenter on law. I noticed that, of course, from experience, you can see that there's a difference between the gender issues in the northern part of the country especially the patrilineal and matrilineal settings. So when you look within the country, you can see a group of vulnerable, some are very poor women somewhere, and in another angle, you may see more empowered women who own land, vast lands, and can plant cocoa and other plantations. On another side of the divide, you have women who only have 1 acre or 2 acre and can only plant some granules and intercrop with other small things. So in her presentation, I even noticed that when it came to issues of court matters, if you contribute to your husband's farm and it happens that there's a divorce or there's an issue, some people could take it to court. But this is my poor rural woman sitting out there. Can she really take such an issue to court? In the South, it might be possible because somehow, I wouldn't say the whole of the South, but in the matrilineal setting, some women have better advantages than the North. So what I'm driving at is, in presenting the issues, let's be somehow context specific, and let's also try to find out why the examples that she was giving, ahead of Date, Nate, or Mensa, and another person, they were all Southern names that were mentioned. Are there any examples that can also be drawn, or that can also be cited in the northern part of Ghana to encourage me, who is a northern woman, and also working with other women, that there are women, that women in the north have also got rights, and some can also pick up such issues when they come up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Edna Bafuboni from the Ministry of Finance, Agriculture and Agribusiness Unit. Unfortunately, the one I'm directing my question to is not here.
Never mind.
Okay.
Go right
It goes to my colleague from Guinness Ghana Limited. Yeah, I wanted to find out in which area are they investing? Then the second aspect is how are they able to get the quality of their produce? I'm asking these two questions because of my experience in the north in, I guess, last year, specifically at Damongo. Talking to the director, the district director, we asked of post-harvest losses. And he told us that, yes, the private sector, that is the brewery, is interested in the produce that they produce. But then what they are saying is that they cannot get the quality that they need simply because of the distance. So I wanted to find out, how are they able to get their produce? Then in which area are they investing? Because he was telling us that, yes, they are trying to let them build semi-structures or factories in the north that they can semi-process their produce before getting it down here. So I just wanted to have more information about this.
My name is Sarah Inchubu-Esiaku from the Ghana Land Administration Project. Yes, I want to find out from the Riyadh unit how much of their budget was allocated. How much budget was allocated to the unit or the directorate last year, and did they actually receive the money to undertake their work? And I also want to find out how I don't know whether there's a policy to regulate large-scale acquisition of land, because now it's a very dicey issue that we are all battling with, in order not to deprive small rural farmers from the little land they use to survive on. My third question is, how is the ministry linked with other entities so that women farmers, or let's say farmers in general, register their interest in land, or to even document it at the Kashmiri level, Kashmiri Land Secretariat? How are things are done? Because it is when they have a document that they will be able to say that I have this piece of land to invest in, and will have the confidence to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think the observation of the lady who talked about the need to make a distinction between the northern as well as the southern, the differences. In the work I have been part of, which is, remember I mentioned this Assessment of Customary Law project, where I'm working with the National House of Chiefs to document what are the various interests in land, what are the challenges, what are the concepts, etc. You can tell, I mean, at this stage we are doing what we call, it's more like anthropological work. We are documenting what are the issues. And of course, you can see from the reports from the northern sector as compared to the reports from the southern sector, there are great differences. In the northern sector, the challenges, the barriers, the cultural concepts that are there which debar women, they are clearly outlined. But for me, what I keep saying is that at the moment, we're just unearthing and documenting. We actually have the documented reports, they are available. The next stage would be to try to, for the National House of Chiefs, to be able to look at those reports, look at the constitutional provisions that we have, and then they can then have to dialogue with their colleagues on some of these traditional rules which are not acceptable. Or some of the rules to which have to change because statutory law has come in. Remember, I said we have a pluralistic legal system. So there are these interfaces, okay? In the three northern regions, they told us, oh, they're still insisting that women don't inherit land. And then we asked them, are you aware that there's a state law, the intestate succession law, which says that parental property is supposed to be, on intestacy, is supposed to go to children, irrespective of sex. They said they are not aware, it doesn't apply. I mean, some of them will tell you it doesn't apply to them. So it is, once the information is on earth, that people are still holding on to things which have even been legislated against. It is up to all of us, NGOs, as well as others who are working at the local level, to then intervene and tell them that, look, this practice that you have is not acceptable because the state law has come in. When I was helping to prepare the report for the original 20 traditional areas, one of the comments I had on the side was that some of the information we collected on customary, we also did customary family law as well. And there were a lot of things that they said which there are other laws in place which have displaced those practices. So it becomes a dialogue. Okay? It becomes a dialogue. I remember in one of the areas, I think Kasina Nankana, they had this saying in their language which says that when it comes to land, women belong to the bush. And we asked them, what does it mean? And they said, women don't inherit in their father's house. They don't also inherit in their husband's house. So where do they belong? They belong to the bush. So once you unearth this type of information, then it gives all of us a lot of work to do to try to intervene. So in my full presentation, I tried to make a few of the differences, but in the 15 minutes that was allocated, you can only say a few things at a time. So we all have work to do. And then you indicated that the case law that I mentioned, I only mentioned, 3 cases. Yes, they are from the southern part. But in our law reports, there are other areas of the law, especially in family law, where we have some outstanding cases from the north. Okay, Akologo and all those cases. There's lots of cases. So it's also still, we have the Legal Aid Board, access to law or to the court is a challenge in some parts of the country, even in southern rural areas. But we have the Legal Aid Board, we have somebody mentioned WILDAF, which has been trying to translate laws into the lowest, and then even educating some semi-illiterate people as legal aid volunteers to be able to go into the rural areas and help people with initial legal aid and then referring them to various institutions. So there are things out there. I think in the north, in Tamale, we have the Legal Resources Center, which has an office also in Waliwale, as well as in some other places where they are providing legal services. As I'm speaking to you now, there are other initiatives that we are all involved in. The Ghana Bar Association Women and Minors Rights Committee, we've just given money to some of our colleagues to go to WA and the rest to also do legal literacy information. So we are all doing the little that we can. But so one of my recommendations was that we still need support, either through budgetary allocations to the WIATs and the rest to go to the ground, or our development partners who have helped us to try to unearth some of the problems. They should also help us with the intervention. And so the interface, it involves all of us. I think the gender, the one in charge of gender at LAB, Land Administration Project, I think the question she asked, she's better placed to respond to it. Because she's working on actually I wasn't really paying attention to the specific question, but when it comes to gender, LAB and land, she's the person who can explain to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and well spoken, Sheila. There are very landmark cases from the northern part of Ghana on customary practices that are even examples for the southern sector. Thank you. Because of time, yes. Let's get the answer.
issue of collaboration. Yes, we do collaborate with other ministries. And we also collaborate with gender-based civil society organizations. Auntie Lydia is looking at me. She knows. When there's a collision of activities, that kind of thing happens. But you've invited me and I've attended some of your programs. Yes, we do collaborate with other institutions and ministries. WIAD is more of a coordinating directorate when it comes to gender in the Ministry of Food and Agriculture. The ministry has many directorates. They are all supposed to be gender sensitive. And it's the the Women in Agri Directorate that holds the gender desk and teaches these other directorates to ensure that everything they are doing has a gender perspective. So there should be sex disaggregated data. The activities should be engendered, and whatever we have in the guts, the objectives that we have in the guts are not about WIAD per se. Each objective is linked to the mandate of the directorates within the ministry. So, as we all together look at the guts, we ensure that agriculture becomes gender sensitive. And WIAD is the coordinating directorate for that purpose. There was a question about our funding. You want to hear about it? My chief director is smiling. Yes. No, we get support from other places, small, but at home. For last year, we got 30,000 Ghana cedis. Oh, no. Please spare me. Please spare me. This was what we got. Please spare me. And this year so far, we have 15,000. So if there's any benevolent person who would want to support us, we are ready for the support. And we think we'll do wonders when we are supported. So far, we've been supported by a few people. We've lost one supporter, and I'm frightened. You know, without the support that used to come from that arena, I wonder how we are going to manage. So, we are appealing. If there's any institution that has something to give for our activity, we will gladly take it and humbly ask for more from others.
Yeah, I think a lot have been said, and maybe reacting to some of the issues of the budget. So we are all operating within a certain constraint at the moment. We are experiencing some financial difficulties as a nation. Otherwise, I think WIAD is one of the most important directorates within the ministry, and she herself can attest. It's only of late last year that I think we are not able to give them more funds as we ought to have done. But like I said, as the financial situation improves, I think we will be able to do that. So far, that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I've said all what I have to say in my speech, and on technical issue, we have a number of colleagues from FA who are here will support the process. I just want to highlight two things. The first one, gender in agriculture, gender in development, and all these aspects is not something new. It has been an issue for years. So what I will suggest is instead of focusing on the difficulties, the challenge, and highlighting what we all know to some extent, let us share the best experience. Let us focus on proposal so that at the end of the meeting, for sure, we'll have key resolution will help us to move forward. The second aspect is not because the Honorable Minister is here. I think Ghana is one of the countries where you have a clear, specific directorate related to gender in agriculture, and particularly focusing on women. Like I used to say, there's no country where you will find everyone being happy with a government or a ruler. We all complain. But when we are complaining, let us see what is the trend and how we can, let us say, consolidate this trend. I think the fact of having this directorate, as the director just mentioned, this directorate is facing a number of challenges. So let us see from the scope of partners, ranging from the NGO to other governmental institutions and international organizations like FAO, how we can help this directorate achieve some of its mandate. So let me stop here. Thank you.
We are expectant that as from the next session, we will move from the problems, challenges, and towards the direction you have so clearly marked out for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. A couple of issues came up. I think it's always good to be put under pressure because people have to eat breakfast before they come to this forum. And so if there are issues affecting agriculture, the Minister of Agriculture will definitely be the institution to put under pressure. But I just want to make a general point that there are issues that confront agriculture that are not under the control of the Minister of Agriculture. So many of the issues to discuss have got to be taken in that context. Yes, we respond as a matter of policy to all issues about food and agriculture in Ghana. But the nitty-gritty of getting the food and agriculture to make progress will have to involve other institutions and agencies. And so we need to put those things in that context. Land is key. All agricultural activities have to occur on land. But we are not the ministry in charge of land administration. I believe that's why the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources have their experts here to make submissions for us to discuss. And so when most of these issues affecting land acquisition, land administration are put directly onto the Minister of Agriculture, it becomes a little bit of a misunderstood context of the discussion. So that's just one point I wanted to make. It's not to put the responsibility on other agencies. We take responsibility to coordinate anyway. And so we have a responsibility to answer some of the questions that come up. There was a worry expressed about policies not being in local languages so that people can appreciate. I want to say that the Minister of Agriculture chooses the appropriate language depending on what it is involved in. So somebody may be relating to a policy in the form of engaging in an activity. The language to speak there is to demonstrate to the person that this activity helps your progress in agriculture. It doesn't have to be, let's explain FASDEP in Dagbani, let's explain Metasip in this language, etc. It doesn't have to be so. Because we are all relating to the policy at different levels. So the appropriate language will definitely be chosen depending on where you are relating to the policy. And that came to the issue of e-extension. I want to again say that e-extension is not coming to replace the already known extension tools that we use. It is coming to augment the extension services to our clients who are farmers in the rural setting. And it is meant to take advantage of the digital information age to affect agricultural development. Why must somebody be holding a smartphone and will have to travel from his village to the district director of agriculture to ask a question and be answered, when he can send him a text message to make an inquiry and get it? That's just basically what e-extension is standing for. And a lot of investment is being made in the area so that we can have access to it. I remember there was even an organization that already went to the field to assess e-extension, simply because we mentioned that e-extension was done 2 years ago. And I was asking, but we haven't even started implementing. What are you assessing? So clearly, the report of the research indicated that e-extension hasn't reached my district, Miang district, where the deputy minister comes from. And I said, yes, it's not surprising, because if you had come to the ministry, we have told you where we are, instead of you to go to Miang and be asking whether we have come there. So I want to let us say that in many instances, when some of these comments are to be made, visit us. It is your Ministry of Food and Agriculture. It is not my Ministry of Food and Agriculture. We are in the ministry because of you. You are not in your farms and your businesses because of us. So it tells who is servicing the other. My last comment. I also want to say that when we are discussing some of these very thorny, important issues, let's step outside our closets and look at it more as a general issue, particularly the land issue in the terms of the North and South divide. It's always good to analyze problems in a cultural context, but don't call one culture wholly bad and the other culture wholly good. For instance, if you have a matrilineal system of inheritance and another group has a patrilineal system of inheritance, the way they relate to their resources will definitely be different. So what is being said is, even if it is a matrilineal system of inheritance and women are disadvantaged, how do you find a solution in that context? If it is a patrilineal system of inheritance and women are disadvantaged, how do you find a solution in that context? It is not to use a broad brush and say that, oh, for the women from the North, they are all miserable, tired, the men are beating them, this, so and so. As for those in the South, they are well dressed, very nice, lawyers, etc. No, that is not the context in which the discussion should be. I beg of us. Even the issues of religion, people want to respect what the Bible tells him to conduct himself, or the Quran tells him to conduct himself, rather than common law that Madam was referring to. All these are influences that attack our relationship with how resources should be managed and distributed in our communities. What the governments do is to try to rationalize all these conflicting differences so that we can move forward as a country. I thank you very much.
Mine is just to close this session, to thank Honorable Minister for staying until now with us and listening. Thank you very much, and responding to the Chief Director as well, and of course Dr. Tombiano. We are very grateful that you actually took a whole morning to come and listen to us. The other one is, I would like to thank my presenters. They were excellent. We have Dr. Dorothy Efa giving us the policy context for the agriculture, the national policy for agriculture. We had Dr. John Bugri, who gave us how gender is integrated in a program by how they've developed tools. We had Miss Mary Opoku Asiama, the director of WEIRD, who explained to us where WEIRD's role is and how it's making sure that gender is integrated in agriculture processes. And finally, we looked at land, and Ms. Sheila Minka Premo talked to us about land, the land policy, the land laws. And then we had our multi-stakeholder group of discussants, again underscoring the multi-stakeholder nature. What these presentations did was just to lay the groundwork and set the context. And now I think we are all ready to get going with our workshop. Thank you very much.